Can you hear us?
I can.
Yes.
We're good. We're just muted.
Okay. We're approving the minutes from May 5th, 2022. We have a motion by Edwin. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Emmett.
Chairman Walt Stanish,
Yes.
Vice Chair Lisa Hetchman,
Yes.
and Okamura,
Yes.
Tom Donnelly,
Yes.
Emmett Holtzlander,
Yes.
Judith Adamson,
Judith, you're on mute.
saw her say yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Lisa Duke,
Yes.
Next item for discussion is 4.1, public outreach and input received to date. Paul?
Chair, members of the committee, thank you for your time this evening. Paul Yunker and West Consulting Group reporting on the general plan update. We will be moving through the 3 items on the agenda: public outreach, draft vision statement, and next steps. Just want to give a brief introductory statement. Nick, could you go next slide? So go ahead and next slide, Nick. So a lot of what we'll be discussing this evening is the community input we've received to date. We've had great input initially from the working group itself, sharing with us your thoughts, what you see as the values and the critical issues in the community. We've also had about 30 community members attend with our community outreach events, those are the workshops. Additionally, we had a really nice meeting with Rotary, so we directly touched about 50 people in person in the community. The Mind Mixer site has had over 100 interactions. That's people logging on and participating at the Mind Mixer site in one way or another. And then a lot of the input we've received is from the community surveys themselves. We're at 90 surveys submitted at this point. We would like more, candidly. We would like to hear from more residents of Rio Vista, but at this point, we feel like we've had a good amount of input, but more than that, we've seen a lot of correlation. So there's a lot of themes that are recurring in different venues and through different sources of information. What we'd like to do now is ask Eunice M on our team to walk through the findings from the surveys themselves. So Eunice has tabulated and kind of pulled together some of the information from those. Eunice?
Hello, everyone. So the following slides will be a summary of what we've received from the Mind Mixer survey and also from the paper surveys. As a quick summary, we received a total of 90 of those summary responses, and this is a summary of the questions that were presented. The first question was, which of the following do you like about Rio Vista? Select all that applies. The greatest response we had to that was proximity to river at 52 responses. Then it was historic downtown, family and child-friendly town being the top 3 responses. The lowest responses to this question were schools, access to services, proximity to work. Next slide, please. The second question was, which of the following do you consider most essential to improving Rio Vista? Select your top 3. The top response to this was dining options, indoor and outdoor. Second top was the additional shopping options. Third response that we received was waterfront business. And then the fourth at healthcare facilities with 26 responses. Next slide, please. Where do you live? Many of the responses came from people who lived at Trilogy and also the historic core, considered generally west of Rolling Green and South Druin. Next slide, please. And then to the question, do you work in or own a business in Rio Vista? 27% said that they do work or own a business in Rio Vista, and 73% said no. Next slide, please. Do you own or rent a home? To which 20% said that they rented, and 80% said that they owned a home. Next slide, please. And then to the question, what age range are you in? We had the highest response from the age group of 60 to 74 years old. The second highest response group was from 75 or older at 22%. And then the third highest response group was from 40 to 59 age range. So that was a quick summary of our survey response.
Before we move on. So the Munis has provided a pretty quick flyover, but it is really interesting to see some of the themes and what's important to community members. I believe that, Nick, could you go back about 3-4 slides? Keep going right there, the blue bars. What's interesting here is the top 3 categories: dining options, additional shopping options, and waterfront businesses. That's really all about a downtown business environment. So that's really rising up high. What is, I guess, really heartening is public safety is low on the list. And I think that means that we don't have a problem, because if people felt that crime was an issue, then that would be much higher on the list. So that's really a very positive thing to see that low on the list. But we will want to be looking at this tabulation and all of the input as we think about how we're planning for Rio Vista. So this is a really helpful summary right here. Nick, I think you're going to go on and talk a little bit about the themes and kind of the initiatives that we've been identifying out of this work.
Should we first, go ahead. Should we first talk about the results and the demographic breakdown? Or can we talk about that first?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Be interested in
Yeah.
any comments at any point.
Yeah, because I'm not exactly sure if the data would change, but if we were to publish this data and suggest that 61% of the market is 60 plus, 60 to 75 years of age, I don't know how happy people would be with that information. It seems to me if we're to, and I just thought of it just now, the possibility of publishing this data and then asking for people to, and then keep the survey information open. And the reason I say that is that we may get a lot of pushback or people suggesting that, wow, this is not how I see it. And then we might get a more diverse response, because I think a lot of times people, you know, when you ask them for their opinion, they don't give it until they disagree with somebody else's opinion. And that's just a thought. It just seems to me the data, we don't quite have enough to, I'm conflicted because I believe this is the result we're going to end up getting at the end of the day, because I think past surveys have shown this, but I think the demographic data that we've shown here thus far doesn't pan out. It doesn't equate to the population. For instance, I also saw that it said that 27% of the people own businesses. That's far from the breakdown of our community.
Well,
Right.
it wasn't just owning
63% do
businesses,
not.
was it?
Hmm?
It wasn't just owning businesses, was it?
It was work or
Work,
business.
Work in Rio Vista, yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, I got it. Okay, so that might be
That's
fair.
essentially 27% are working or owning businesses in town. 73% are commuting out of town for work.
Or not working at all.
Yeah, that,
Because 61 plus are probably not working, is my guess.
but that should be in the data too, I would think. If they're not working, it would be nice to know. Then we know they're not commuting out of town. Can we get a copy of this? Can you email it all to us?
All of our presentations are in fact posted.
No, but I mean, just what you're doing tonight.
Sure,
Okay,
yeah.
it's easier for
presentation
me
itself,
to print that way. Yeah,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Does anyone else feel the same that I do? The
Well,
same as I?
if you think about the Rio Vista, half of the people that live in Rio Vista are over 55.
Sure.
So you're really actually getting, real, I think, real data of, how many people are over that age. I mean, it's like voting, you can't get the young people to vote. All the old people are filling surveys out and voting and all of these other things. I mean, if you went to the under 20 or 20 to 39, I mean, I'm sure that a lot of those would say, yeah, we need indoor and outdoor dining. And I mean, I saw that other one said restaurant, or what is it, bars and pubs and things was low, nightlife option, bars, nightclubs, live entertainment was like sixth from the bottom. I mean, if you had the younger people, I mean, you might see more of that. I don't know.
Yeah, so you're suggesting you think the data is accurate? I mean, I don't disagree, actually. I'm just saying that I want to make sure that the community feels comfortable with the
Right.
data that we received.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, if everyone here feels like, hey, this is where the data is going to fall, then maybe that's it. We're fine.
I mean, the under 30 people aren't going to say healthcare facilities. I mean, some of these things are definitely for,
Right.
what the older person would say. I mean, personal services, salons, barbers, dry cleaners, I mean, all that stuff is low. Street signage, nobody cares. Yeah, I mean, I think the top three are still going to be the top three, even if you hit the younger people, but we won't know that unless we had more younger people filling out the survey.
And like Edwin said, maybe that'll encourage them to fill out a survey, considering they see that most of the people are over 50. So that might help bring in that younger demographic of the folks.
Hi, this is Tom. Out at Liberty, and those are a lot of the new families in town here. So that was really the only thing I spotted that concerned me there. And of course, the disrespect for uniform street signage also, but that's just a personal thing.
Did you fill that one out?
Yeah.
And a reminder, this is just the fill-in questions. This is not the write-in questions, open response information. I'll be going over that in a moment. So some of that information we've collected. I believe Emmett has a question or a comment.
Comment, yeah, I agree with what has been said so far, but I also see the point that Edwin made about you may not get other responses until people see this. And like he was saying, the ones that don't agree with the responses we have now are the ones that you probably will end up hearing from. And I think it would be best to get a little better, can't think of across the board response from the whole city. I agree, Trilogy and the Liberty 55 plus community makes up a lot of the town, or what, about half of the population. But I think you're gonna get some real pushback from some of the people that have lived here longer and have the younger families, because you're gonna get more moving out here with the housing that's coming.
So then I guess that leads the question to what is going to be the tipping point when we cut this off for getting final data in?
Good question.
We're open to continuing to receive comments and input throughout this process. We will continue to receive input. What we need to do as your working team is start to produce findings, kind of summations of this. And so that's what you're going to start to see at the end of this evening's presentation, is a vision statement and some of our guiding priorities. Now, if we start to see a change in the input that we're receiving, those priorities will shift. And I'm sure they will shift as we work through the community, but we're very open to continuing to receive input through the surveys, or as we move on, input to any of the work products we'll produce.
We had talked once before about putting this in the water bill. Is that still a possibility?
We could put anything in the water bill that we like, but if we're going to do that, it has to be very concise, I think. If we put a long elaborate piece, I think the readership would be very minimal. So I was already in my mind thinking, well, what if we tabulated some results and got an article in the newspaper and said, hey, we got a bunch of input from the community and here it is. By the way, if you wanted to provide your input, here's the link, go to this survey. So that might kickstart some more participation in the survey.
I think if we did both, it would probably be helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, those are pretty low effort ways to, touch the community and say, yes, we still want to hear your thoughts. So. Okay.
I think that'd be great.
Yeah, I
mean,
think you need to do that, really. Sorry, Ed.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I mean, I think this is half of this project is about making sure we have buy-in from the community. And if we don't have the community involved, then obviously it's all for naught.
Yeah.
So how long would it take to get something in the water bill? Because I remember back when we first started these meetings in January or February, we had talked about it and now it's July. So are we going to really get it in the water bill?
Christine,
From my
you
understanding
look-
from finance, it needs to be, they need to have it almost, a month prior to them sending out because they have to put it through the printer and it has to go through something with the other Christine. And I think they send it out 15 to 20 days before it's even needs to be sent out, if that makes sense.
So we usually get our bills around the 15th in the mail.
Yeah, and so they're sending it out prior to that and we have to get it to her prior to her sending hers out, if that makes sense.
Is that possible, you think, this month to get a paper survey in the bill?
I think this would have to go on the August bill.
That works
I
for me.
don't think that's bad.
Okay.
I mean, the reality
Unless
is
you
you're
can do
already,
some fast talking.
yeah, and this isn't stopping the process and you're continuing to work and more than
Yeah.
likely, as I said, I think the data is going to show that it's virtually the same.
No, it's actually very easy for us to continue to set information and even once we're drafting the general plan elements, there'll be works in progress and we'll be getting refined through the working group's input, the community's input. So this is, I think it's still very timely.
Sorry for interrupting.
Right, I'm going to take a few moments to talk about the public input we received from you as a general plan working group, the community meetings we held virtually for the first meeting and then the meetings in June. My mixer, a lot of the input we received with the open-ended questions that people wrote in their thoughts on Rio Vista and how to improve the city. And the surveys, either hand or hard copies and my mixer surveys. This is all the information we received, and we've organized all this information into a document. We've tried to categorize it by key themes or initiatives of public input. These are the 10 that we came up with: quality of life, growth and development, environment and open space, community character and urban form, land uses, economy and businesses, accessibility and mobility, infrastructure, recreation, community services, art and culture, and then engagement and governance in the city. So I'm going to run through each of these 10 themes, and we synthesized the information down to between 5 and 10 key takeaways from each of these themes. So these are the things that we've been generally hearing from the community through all the outreach to date. Most of the comments for quality of life was positive. I'd say generally all of it was pretty positive. It's a peaceful living environment, living in Rio Vista in a small town. You have a lot of great community events. that happen throughout the year, and people are proud of those events and like to attend them. Low crime and a safe place to live, that came up quite a bit throughout our outreach efforts. It's a friendly community and a great place to raise a family and has a great standard of living. In terms of growth and development, a lot of people had written in that they think a better integration of the waterfront with the downtown area is needed. And just as we saw from the survey just a few moments ago, you know, people really want to see new development in the waterfront area and the downtown area related to restaurants and other things. The focus they want to see is on compact development and infill development within the city in existing built-up areas. So not necessarily doing leapfrog development, you know, not having space between things, but just trying to keep it more compact. Make the riverfront, waterfront area more of an attraction so you can get people from outside of Rio Vista to stop. And also responding to growth around Rio Vista that will impact the community in the future is important. For environment and open space, again, the waterfront's important, and I think the waterfront river is a major asset to build upon. More amenities oriented to the waterfront would be helpful and would be great to have in the future. Sea level rise came up as a concern, and flooding in the city. So something to keep in mind as we're developing the general plan. Concern over water quality and supply was also noted in several meetings and several surveys. Maintaining and preserving natural open spaces and open space corridors was important. And providing more green space, whether it's a small public plaza with small benches or trees and grass areas, would be something that people want to see in the city. For community character and the form of the city, people want to retain the small town charm and the agricultural roots of the community. People wrote in that they liked the unique character of the downtown homes, such as the Victorian homes in the downtown area. The city has great, you know, urban fabric, the way it's set up, the way it's structured. People thought it's well laid out, but just needs some enhancement and beautification. And some properties in the city are blighted, and they want to see those be improved and perhaps better code enforcement to help that along. In terms of maintaining landscaping along roads, people wanted to see more of an effort for that to make streets a little bit nicer to view when you're driving through the community. Land uses, we got a lot of comments, a lot of feedback, especially in the community meetings and the mapping exercises we did. But these generally came up the most here, these 10 bullets. People wanted to see moving the industrial uses out of the downtown area, waterfront area, and incorporating new uses and activities more conducive to a pedestrian and walkable downtown area. They wanted to see more community space be provided, particularly near City Hall. More restaurants and bars in the downtown area, encouraging mixed-use buildings. So that would be, you know, retail with residential above in the downtown area and waterfront. Again, with housing, providing a range of housing that meets the community's needs. So that could be, you know, whether it's single family or multifamily or, you know, townhouses or apartments. They want to see a range of housing options. The airport came up a couple times or a few times as well, being underutilized. I remember we talked about that in our meetings with General Plan Working Group. And people also mentioned that should be improved. More medical services and medical offices and doctors are needed in the community. Several times people mentioned a community center is needed, and providing more childcare facilities and after school programs is important. Sorry about that. For the economy and businesses, vacant storefronts and absentee landlords are an issue in downtown. People would like to see creating more of a vitality in the downtown area with more retail, restaurants, and entertainment. Again, creating a local economy that can attract jobs and reduce the need for commuting. So attracting good quality jobs in the city that people can work in and also live in the community. Make Rio Vista a destination instead of a city to pass through on their way going somewhere else on Highway 12. And fostering the growth of a small locally owned businesses is important. A couple more, promoting economic development is important to residents, providing more access to jobs, and providing encouraging and having assets or things to encourage more local businesses. And a lot of people came up with schools and said in the last community meetings in June that there's a lot of improvements that are needed to schools to attract people and attract residents to move to or new residents to move to the city, and getting talented people and attracting families to the city is important, and schools will be a key part of that. I think the biggest or the largest amount of comments came regarding accessibility and mobility, particularly with Highway 12. So lots of comments on that, and that's not a big surprise from all we've been hearing. So reducing traffic congestion on Highway 12 and improving traffic flow on Highway 12 and around the city, providing a pedestrian crossing over Highway 12 is needed, better traffic management as the city grows into the future. Roads should be improved as new development occurs, new housing and new development should see roads being improved along with them. Improving the safety of roadways for vehicles and bicyclists and pedestrians is important. Better access and circulation for pedestrians and bicyclists, and improving the access from outer neighborhoods such as Trilogy to downtown is important. A couple more items: replacing or repairing sidewalks in the downtown area and throughout the city. Safe paths to schools are needed so kids can walk safely to school. And public transportation, providing options for some forms of transit seem to be needed from community members. For infrastructure, people want to see the infrastructure being kept up with new development being built. The water infrastructure of the city should be improved in the future. Several comments came up about that in community meeting number 1, especially. Improving broadband and fiber optic communication so people can easily work from home and have good access to these types of utilities is important. School facilities need upgrading, so providing upgrades to existing buildings, because people feel that the schools are at capacity and need upgrading and need improvements to keep up with the demand of students. And more funding in general is needed for schools. Okay, a couple more to go. Recreation, community services, art and culture. People really thought that a need for more family-friendly activities are needed, more youth programs and amenities, such as sports fields and athletic fields are needed, and promoting and offering community events to bring people together at community festivals. You already have quite a few of those, but I think people wanted to see even more, perhaps, in the future. Active participation is happening in nonprofits in the city and many opportunities to volunteer. So a lot of people thought that's a great thing about Rio Vista, that so many people really want to make the community better and offer their time and their energy towards the community. And then helping to provide places for local artists and craftspeople to come and maybe set up a shop or set up a studio in the downtown area. People thought incentivizing local artists could be helpful to the community. And then the last theme was engagement and governance. People said in a couple of our community meetings, the government's open, inclusive, and accessible. So that's a positive thing about the city today. People did want to see, though, some better coverage and communication of things happening in the city, either in the local papers or online, current events. A few people wrote in that they wanted to see City Hall move into another location. So maybe relocating that so you could provide an opportunity to do some new development near the waterfront in its place. New police and fire substations were also discussed, having those come in at some point, and then having a more business-friendly attitude at City Hall. Some people have mentioned that as well. So quite a bit of good feedback and comments. We do have, you know, some even more listed, you know, from our documentation, but these were the kind of the highlights that Paul, myself, and Eunice went through as we were kind of looking through all this information. So I'd be happy to have a discussion about all these items.
And Nick, I have a question. In the very first slide of this part of the program, you talked about quality of life. You said that there were some negatives. Do you know what those negatives were? Because if there's something that we really need to work on, that should be on this as well.
No, I mean, to be honest with you, I can't really think of any negatives other than people want to see new activities coming to the city into the downtown area. I don't recall, and if Paul and Eunice, you can help me, but all the meetings we've had, I don't think anyone mentioned, you know, safety as an issue or it not being a friendly community, you know, an easy place to live. I mean, everything was positive. So when I say negative, I don't remember hearing any negative items. For quality of
Nick,
life.
I think as we discussed this afternoon, I believe, there was a number of comments where we received responsive things people really like about Rio Vista, and those were almost entirely positive. And then we also asked what could be even better. And I wouldn't really characterize those as negatives as Nick was describing. They're just areas where we could work to improve. So a lot of those statements in those themes were more like, we want to go even more in this direction. But there was, I mean, on the last slide, City Hall could be more business friendly. That actually is a bit of a knock I've heard, but honestly, I've heard that in just about every city I've ever worked in. So,
Yeah.
but those are things we can work on as compared to the values that people really like about Rio Vista today.
Sometimes if people don't get the answer they want from City Hall, it's considered a negative, even though that's the only answer they're going to be able to get sometimes.
Well, I think with, excuse me, with regards to City Hall, we have to ask ourselves whether it's the best use down here. Also, in terms of negative, I think you have to read into the other questions. For instance, traffic has always been noted as one. So there are negatives, but they're hidden in other questions.
We certainly have challenges and we have room for improvement in some areas. The waterfront is a tremendous asset that is not at all fully realized at this point. So we have work to do, but we have great opportunities. Chair, if there's any other comments, I do want to point out that we're going to provide you the presentation as requested, but what we will also do is go through the items that we've just discussed and bring those into a Word document and let you look at them in that format. And then you can just help us identify what didn't make it on the list that should have, because you'll probably have some ideas that you as a working group are here to really guide this effort as some of the people who are most knowledgeable about the community. So we will be giving you the presentation as well as this Word document that's going to have these themes, and then also what we're going to discuss next, which is the vision statement. And we will be asking for your input back a week by the end of next week. So.
And this is just my opinion, and I can't speak for anybody else on the panel, but pretty much everything on here is stuff we know. At least I do anyways. None of it's a surprise. And there's nothing up there that like, oh my God, why didn't I think of that? So I don't know how you feel.
No, I agree. It's completely consistent with every other report that's ever been done for the city. When you do surveys, the answers come back consistently.
Okay,
And
great.
the nice thing is our survey numbers were down, but on the other hand, it was absolutely consistent with the 300 or 400 surveys that we received back for the route app.
Great. Okay, Nick, I think we could move on to the vision statement slide.
Yeah.
This is a really important exercise that we're undertaking. The vision statement helps us to frame the general plan. It really says what are those qualities about Rio Vista that are unique and special? What do we care most about? What are we most interested in investing our time and working on? So as these themes get really distilled down to the vision statement, which will be at the beginning of the general plan, and then ultimately within each of the elements, there'll be a statement about what is really important in Rio Vista. And that's going to guide our staff's work to no small degree. We could spend an infinite amount of time writing a general plan. We need to know what we really should spend our time on to address the issues that will bring the most benefit to Rio Vista. So this vision statement becomes our compass. It helps us understand what we really need to achieve to have a successful general plan. So Nick, go ahead and next slide. This is the vision statement, and I'm going to go ahead and read it kind of slowly and let it sink in. So Rio Vista in 2045 is virtually and physically connected community that has maintained a strong sense of community and small town charm. The community provides a diverse, inclusive, equitable, sustainable, and safe place to live, work, and play for all generations. We place a high value on creating a great community for our younger members by supporting our schools and youth programs. Rio Vista supports and values local businesses, arts, and community events, and welcomes visitors from throughout the Bay Area, the Sacramento Valley, and beyond. We are stewards of the environment and honor our agricultural and cultural heritage in the Sacramento River Delta region. We balance these values to maintain a high quality of life for our residents. There's a lot tied up in that. The idea that we're looking at the community across all age categories, that we're considering the economic aspects of the community as well as the social aspects of the community. This resonates with us as staff, but it really has to resonate with you as the general plan working group. So you're going to have the opportunity now to play with this. I don't know if you have any initial thoughts about, is this overly wordy? Is it comprehensive? Is it missed anything? We're very much open to any initial critique, but having just heard it for the first time, we don't expect, your final and be all comments on this. But why don't we take a moment to see what we think?
I'll make a quick, probably a dumb question. I'm not sure what virtually and physically connected means.
In our thought process, virtually is the digital connection, the broadband connection, the social kind of media connection is the virtual side, and then the physically is, knitting together neighborhoods so that people in Trilogy are connected to people in Homecoming or connected to the downtown. So that's the thought, but if the virtually isn't resonating, maybe that's not that important.
I'll let it resonate a little longer. The only thing that I saw missing out of here, because it is pretty comprehensive, is everyone consistently talks about our waterfront, but it's not mentioned in there. But when you talk about, for instance, welcomes visitors throughout the Bay Area and the Sacramento Valley and beyond to our waterfront community or something to that effect.
Great catch. It's
Yeah.
so deeply held that we didn't even think to include it. So that's what we're here for.
One other thing that I think we should include is something about just that it's a community that provides a high level of services to its local citizens. That's kind of a general statement, but there's been over and over discussion about need for healthcare and just access, pedestrian, bike access, that sort of thing. But just something like that just speaks to the community providing level of services to satisfy the community's needs.
Good observation. Thank you.
Yeah, in which case that first sentence, and I'm not wordsmithing because I can't do it without it in front of me on a Word document, but you know, when you talk about connected community that has maintained a strong sense of community and small town charm through connected streets and blah, 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 then you're kind of working in what that was Donnelly said, right? I think Tom said that, but I agree. I mean, one of the charms of cities like Davis, they're much larger city than us, but they're a very well connected community through Greenbelt and pathway systems, et cetera. I mean, it's more on the physical side. I think almost, as I think more about it, the virtual is almost I mean, everyone should have that, or they have it, but that's my opinion.
Great, other thoughts?
Emmett's got his hand up.
Emmett?
You need to unmute.
Yeah, I did. I had to find it on my phone. Just as a first read, it sounds pretty good, but I do agree with a couple of points that have been brought up about making sure some of that information gets included there. But you know, there again, you got to be careful about getting it too wordy as well. But I think the information that's been brought up does need to be included somehow.
Great, any further comments?
Lisa's up.
I'm gonna agree with Edwin. That first sentence drains the life out of, I think, what being virtually and physically connected is a tool for maintaining the strong sense of community versus that so leading with that feels deadening rather than inspiring. And I think if your vision statement, as you have said, is supposed to capture values and aspirations, that doesn't do it for me nearly as much as the second to the last statement or last sentence, or even that we want to maintain a high quality of life for our residents. I think there's some rearranging that needs to happen.
Great input, thank you.
I think you definitely need to keep the virtual thing in there too, because that's the younger generation and the newer people that move out here would love to have like a community-wide network to tie into. And I know some towns and cities are trying to go to that eventually. Makes a big difference.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Well, I've never seen a vision statement that long before. I worked for healthcare and it was, quality healthcare close to home. Boom, boom. And then I looked up Benisha's, and it's to work together to build a sustainable community, enhance the city's overall quality of life. Where is the vision statement going to be? And are people going to actually read that entire thing? Or do we want something really short and to the point? I guess, where is this going to be used and seen?
We're anticipating that this would be at the beginning of the general plan, and it would within the first couple of pages, we would set the tone of what the general plan is trying to accomplish. So the opening kind of statement, it's not something that would be this in its current form is not that kind of catchy tagline that defines.
Okay. So this is just this will just be part of the general plan. This isn't a vision statement that the city's going to use for other purposes.
Yeah, I might clarify. I think this is, you might be not confusing it, but mixing it up with a mission statement. I don't think this is our mission statement for the city, and that would be more like 2 sentences. This is more like an opening paragraph for our general plan. So I think it does need to be a little more comprehensive, but it's, obviously concise.
Exactly. Comprehensive is the key word.
Yeah, this vision statement helps really frame the work of this group, as well as then we can look back at the elements and say, have we achieved it? The vision statement will be supported by the guiding principles, which we're about to walk through. In total, the vision statement and guiding principles is going to be a couple of pages, but it really is the yardstick of you know, this is where we want to be in 2045. So it does take a certain amount of detail in order to give us something to shoot for as a community.
I agree.
Before I moved into town, I opened my business here. And I think for me, what's missing most, especially being that it's a vision statement, is the word potential, because we're trying to crack open all of these things to make the potential of our town bloom and prosper. And somehow we need, in my opinion, we need to add the potential of our city, something to that effect. I'm not the best with words, but. Judith, go ahead.
What Walt just said, I think that it's being written as if the potential had been reached, because we're talking about 2045. So it
Yeah.
might be a matter of tense. But I also would say we place a high value in creating a great community. I have a real thing about great. I think it's overused. How about vibrant? Some different word than great.
And you don't want to get to 2045 and say, okay, we're done.
Or inclusive community. I guess we said that.
Got it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Always room for improvement. Thank you.
I also don't agree with having virtually in there. I can't remember what Emmett was saying, but you were talking about a small network within the town. I guess I don't understand that kind of thing, but I think it's sort of a given that it will always have internet, and that we already do.
Yeah, I was talking about like the Wi-Fi and what have availability of that. That's going to make a big difference to the younger generation.
But don't we already have that?
You do have individual Wi-Fi at each home. I don't think there's a community-wide one like some of the towns and cities are trying to go to,
Oh, I
where
see.
it's basically available for anybody and everybody.
I see.
There's also different levels of connectivity. The speed or the bandwidth that's available to the community can determine whether people can work on the internet effectively in some cases.
Okay.
Okay, well, that was very helpful, good input. We're gonna work this over a little bit before we send it out to the group, and then we expect you to continue to kick the tires and help us refine this statement and make it even better. Nick, why don't we head on to the guiding principles? We've really been in a funnel is the best way to describe it. We've talked to a lot of people through community meetings. We've gotten a lot of input through surveys. If you saw the full list of data that Nick and Eunice have been processing, I think it's 8 or 10 pages of single spaced 11-point font. So lots and lots of data that then got distilled down to the findings that Eunice provided and then the themes that Nick provided. All of that is leading to developing these guiding principles. And what we're seeing now in the vision statement and the guiding principles is actually the first iteration of work product. The beginning of our presentation from Nick and Eunice, that was the raw material that's feeding in. So what we're going to go through now is what we've heard as, you know, really the 8 biggest guiding principles that seem to encompass where we want to be going with this general plan and as a community. So next slide. Here they are. I'm not going to read them because we're about to look at all of them. So next slide. So no big surprise. Right up top, we have revitalized downtown and waterfront district. There's a lot wrapped up in this. It has to do with the improvements, the roads, wastewater, sewer infrastructure, not very sexy to the visitor, but critical to the growth, to the attraction of new development. So we need to make sure that we're ready to accommodate new growth. We've heard we want to keep this a balanced growth strategy. This seems a little bit out of place here, so I think we got a little bit crossed up on the items under revitalized downtown and waterfront district, but we know that that's one of the guiding principles, and we're going to have to revisit this one. Nick, can we go on? Here we go. Okay, improved mobility and access for all users. We know that we have a big issue with Highway 12. Just as a sneak preview, the next meeting we're going to be seriously looking at circulation and transportation. And we will have Dave Robinson from Fair and Pierce participating in our next meeting. But that's not the whole story. There's also mobility in the community. There's pedestrian pathways that were discussed, bicycle routes, safe sidewalks, as well as just being able to get around town with relative ease in vehicles. So it's all of those, as well as, somehow taming this Highway 12 beast that comes through the town and living with it in the best possible way. It's not a problem we're going to solve, Highway 12, but it's a facility we can come to a better accommodation with. And so that's going to be a very important part of the mobility. Next slide. Variety of housing options. So this is really often reflected in a mix of housing types. Rio Vista is very rich in single family dwellings by percentage. There's not a lot of other types of housing options, whether that's apartments or condominiums or different configurations of higher density single family. What we have is fairly traditional single family neighborhoods. Really important part, but we probably could find a greater mix that would provide accommodations for more types of family units. What's not really called out here, and I realized it as I looked at this, and I don't know that we've heard this loudly in Rio Vista, but in many communities I've heard there's no place for our children to buy their first home. There's the second and third home, but there's not a lot of first homes. So our kids need to go somewhere else to start their families. So that may or may not be the case in Rio Vista. Your housing is more affordable than many of the surrounding communities, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily truly affordable. So that might be something that we want to think about in this housing options. Next slide. Foster a sustainable community. This really is not focused on sustainability with a capital S as in solving climate change. It's more sustainability of economic community and a sustainability of making sure that we use our resources wisely. We know that water will be an issue. It's always been an issue in California. Water availability is going to be a bigger issue. We know that we're going to face changes in climate, so we want to be resilient for those. But sustainability is also just meeting community members' needs in the community so they don't have to drive to Fairfield or Vacaville to do their shopping. So having jobs in the community, those are all part of sustainability as well. Having just a little bit more diversified mix of uses is a big part of the sustainability we're talking about. Next slide. Recreational opportunities are really important in any community, but I think Rio Vista is really in a good place to continue to provide great recreational opportunities. The proximity to the river is something that we could really expand upon. As new development comes into Rio Vista, we should be looking and making sure that we're providing for both active and passive recreation, active being sports leagues and passive being pretty much everything else, just families using parks. So we want to be thinking about that through the full range of ages, from young families to retired families, retired individuals. So that's all going to fit within recreational opportunities. Next slide. Balanced growth and open space. This really is speaking to, try to use our land effectively, develop where the services are existing and can be efficiently extended. We really don't, we will be developing into rural lands. I don't see personally that there's a lot of very active agricultural operations right around Rio Vista, but that interface with open space has come up as being really important from a number of residents. The idea of we live in a more rural setting and people really value that. And I think it's also part of that, that as that final bullet says, the small town feel of a community that's not just sandwiched in between 4 other communities. And so that's all part of the balancing growth and open space. Next slide. Foster economic growth is in no small part focused on the downtown, the diversity of businesses and trying to bring more services and more retail opportunities. But there is also a fairly strong kind of more, I don't want to say necessarily industrial, but more not simply retail, other businesses and construction related, and some businesses that rely upon access to the river. So there's already a somewhat diversified economic base. I think we'd like to see that increase over time and provide more opportunities for Rio Vista residents to work in town. Next slide. And promote fiscal strength is, the city has to be responsible in ensuring that the equation of obligations and revenue balances out so that you can take care of the community. That's really, not something the individual resident needs to worry about, but certainly the city and the general plan should make sure that we're creating a community that's going to be fiscally solvent, that is going to be able to maintain itself over time and really take care of and support the community over time, because that really leads to a long-term viability of the community. I've unfortunately seen some new communities that have grown very fast and visited neighborhoods that were no more than 15 years old and they're already looking run down. And that's really sad. And so we want to grow responsibly and efficiently. So those are the, I believe that those are the 8 themes. Is that the last one, Nick?
That is the last one.
So interested in initial thoughts on these, but again, you're going to get this in a document format and we'd be looking for your input. These guiding principles will start to sort out into the individual elements. So obviously circulation element, we have a whole element dedicated to that. Fiscal strength is going to show itself in land use. It's going to show itself in public facilities. It's going to show itself in a number of areas. But what you're starting to see is the kind of the framework of the general plan is beginning to emerge. So with that, comments, thoughts?
A lot to take in.
It's a lot to take in, and that's why we're walking you through the documents, but we're going to provide them to you so then you can step back and review and provide us input over the next week. That's really what we're asking for, is over the next week, get back to us. I know Edwin,
First pass, it looks
Edwin
good.
always has
No.
comments.
First pass, it looks good to me. I mean, since I have to say something, you have a period outside of a quote on the first slide.
Darn it.
Paul, this is Art, and I have a question. You say that you're going to get this in our hands. When can I expect it in my hands?
I want to work on the vision statement tomorrow, but by the end of the day, tomorrow,
Okay, because I would like to start working on this weekend.
you'll get it. And, we're I think sometimes this is something we probably need to tell ourselves on staff and as much as anyone else, but the perfect can be the enemy of the good. And sometimes we have to just move forward with something that's not quite perfect, and that's a stepping stone to getting to where we ultimately want to land. So nothing that we're providing to you is the final set in stone. All of these materials, we're really very interested in your input and very open to your comments. Hey, a cameo appearance. Yeah. Yeah, there was the motorcycle moved off yet? Yeah. Yep. So,
So Paul, I have
yes,
a question.
yes,
I just was wondering, these were all numbered. Are they numbered in that order on a purpose, or is there options to maybe do some rearranging of the numbers so that something like offering recreational opportunities, which probably applies or is looked for by a wide number of people, might maybe before support a variety of housing options, which is a little more clinical, a little drier of a topic?
there isn't a lot of intention with the order that's presented. Eventually, we're going to wrestle with that in the sequence of the general plan itself. And then it, I think, really becomes important to put the items that are really most often and most relevant to the community, most often reviewed, bring those towards the front. But I will admit that there was some wonky public services was number one. And I said, Nick, we can't put that number one. We have to put revitalize downtown number one. So I understand the comment. I'm not sure that this document is not yet ready to go prime time in the community. So comments like that and how we order it so that it will capture the community's interests are welcome.
I have a question. Once this general plan is done, how does it get implemented? Or is that just the end of it and citizens start to try to figure out how to implement it?
For a planner, the saddest thing is to do a wonderful document that sits on the shelf. And
Right.
unfortunately, it does happen. I will tell you, I worked on a general plan with a visionary city manager who said, identify every problem in the community and tell us how we're going to solve it. We wrote a fabulous general plan. It won regional and statewide awards. And when staff looked back and the commitments that were described in it, we would have had to have 3 times the staff members and 5 times the financial resources. So my cautionary statement is, be explicit in your implementation actions, make sure they're within the ability of this city to achieve, and be specific on your timeframes. Say, we're going to get this done by 2024. We're going to get this done by 2025, and that will be in your action plan. I'll tell you, if you don't get specific, you can have wonderful statements that will never lead to any actual change. So
I would think so. Okay, thanks.
I thought Walt had some comment on this one. I mean, Walt and I and Lisa and a number of others have sat on the planning commission. So that is our working document when things come before us. So the reason why it's so important, in my opinion, is certainly when somebody decides to put a storage unit on the waterfront or on River Road, we have a document that we could go to that suggests that cannot happen. And that, of course, relates to land use and everything else. So it has an immediate impact from that perspective.
And absolutely, the general plan land use element and its supporting document, the zoning code, will guide your planning commission decisions. I was really referring to the allocation of resources and the focus of the city. What are you really going to work on? What initiatives are you going to take on as a city? And that's where you as a group are putting forward what you think are the most important actions, and assuming the city council, accepts whatever the city council ultimately adopts, that should be the marching orders for staff. This should be more than a land use document.
Yeah, and I was daydreaming as we were going through this, and I was thinking that I'm not sure if this is done, but it certainly should be done, is that when this document comes to fruition, that all of city staff, I'm always a big guy when I had a business, is that you have to project to your entire staff what the vision for the city is, and then people could get behind it ultimately. For instance, if you're a business-friendly city, but none of the staff know that you're a business-friendly city, then they'll put up roadblocks to you. And so it just feels to me that we should make a really big effort to evangelize this once it is produced, and make sure that everyone in the city, all city staff, and it gets out into the public, and we have a open forum or something at the very beginning and say, hey, this is where we want to go. And so when people are coming to the city with ideas, we could always say, yes, that's exactly what's in our vision statement for the community.
Absolutely. We all want to be pulling in the same direction. Other thoughts about the guiding principles?
To add on to what Edwin said, I think part of it as well is when we're looking at this document as a whole, once it's completed, we have to look at it as if it's a domino effect, because one thing will affect the next. So we have to figure out what is the first couple things that we really need to do to have all these other things kind of fall into place. I mean, if you look at the last general plan, because of the economy and certain things that happened, we should have had 20,000 residents in town by now, and we're just halfway there, basically a little over. And even if we were to continue with that general plan, because of the land sales around the town, I don't know if we'd ever get to 20,000 residents, because we don't have anywhere to expand, because all the property's been bought up. So I think we have to live within our limitations of we can only go so far, but we also have to start in a place where it's going to make other things come to fruition too.
The very real change that's occurred because of the acquisition of properties means that we're not blue sky planning for a city of 20 or 25 or 30,000.
Right.
And it really constrains what we can anticipate, and it should change what we're willing to accept on those lands that are within the city, because it's no longer there's an unlimited field in which we can grow. It's actually a very limited field. And so what land is available becomes more precious. So that's.
Can I just jump in real quick? I read something the other day, and I don't know if it was in the Daily Republic in Fairfield or something online about that land that's been purchased from the base out to us by Flannery. Was that, is it the city of Fairfield or the city of Suisun is relaxing its principles on building more homes faster, and that the Flannery plans to build homes all the way from Walmart to out here eventually, that's what their goal is, to build homes all the way here. And it's something about the city, and that they had given the okay to build homes where normally they had said that they wouldn't. I'd like to find that again. But anyway.
I'm sorry, can you offer anything more? What, it was a newspaper article?
I'm going to go tomorrow. I'm going to get back online and try and find that. It was something either the city of Suisun. I think it was the city of Suisun, because out by Walmart is the city of Suisun, not the city of Fairfield. So it must have been the city of Suisun and the Planning Commission. I'll have to look. And I thought, oh my God, I need to take notes of this and bring it up. But it said that the plan for Flannery was to build homes all the way here. And I thought, wow, what's going to happen with Highway 12? If they build all the way out here, is it part of Rio Vista then? Or how does that all happen? I don't know.
Oh, I can tell you it won't be so soon. because they kind of bump into Travis and they got the Delta. So I don't think Sassoon's coming our direction, but Fairfield potentially.
I'll see if I can find that article again, but it was definitely something that the city had done. Maybe it was the city of Fairfield.
I work with the planners in Sassoon and Fairfield, and I'll reach out to them and see if they know, because we're all very interested in what Flannery is doing. This is the first time I've heard any suggestion of what
Yeah.
their plan is. It's
It's
been
just
just
something I
history.
saw it within the last week. So it's relatively new, so. That'd be great if you can poke around and see what it was. I'll keep looking.
I'm not sure where my wife saw it, but she saw something about a new international airport.
That was something that was talked about too when they started
Yeah.
to buy that, was that in 50 years that there won't be a Travis, and that they're building,
Mhm.
they're buying all of that so that they are going to turn it, it'll be an international airport sometime, and they'll have all that
Yeah.
land for hotels and parking lots and all of that, so. But this was just within the last week I saw that they were
Yeah.
going to build homes.
It's a huge issue, and we're gonna have to fold this in as best we can in the general plan, so.
Start building the wall or the fence now, right?
That's what I'm thinking. Sphere of influence, area of
Mhm.
interest, annexation.
Get your passports ready.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, thank you for the thoughts on the guiding principles. We're going to we're gonna work on these a bit more, and I think the commitment I made to Tom was we'll get this out to you by end of day tomorrow. And so Nick, Eunice, and I will brush up a little bit on the vision statement, on the guiding principles, and forward to you documents. Nick, would you like to take us through the schedule at this point, where we're at and where we're going?
Sure. So we've seen this schedule before. We've presented this in some past meetings, and it's on our fact sheet for the general plan update process. And we have 5 key milestones that we're doing throughout the process. The first part of the project was the background analysis and kind of existing conditions collection and reviewing existing policies. So we're past that. And we've been in the listening and visioning phase here probably since January, where we've been doing a lot of outreach to the community, doing the surveys, having the community meeting number 2 recently in June. So working on the vision statement and these guiding principles, this is where we are now, but we're quickly heading into developing the draft general plan and heading into this third box of preparing the general plan elements and policies. So this is what we'll be stepping into here over the summer and over the next few months, is really getting into the general plan elements, writing the draft documents, writing the draft goals and policies that will be in each of the elements of the general plan. So we're in the third area here now, and then we'll be heading into, preparing the public draft general plan later this year. In terms of next steps, as Paul mentioned, we'll be crafting the vision statement more, based on, tomorrow, but also based on your comments on the draft vision statement and guiding principles. We'll be, revising those and kind of massaging those over the next few weeks. And then we'll be heading into the land use and mobility elements, drafting specific elements of the plan here over the next few months. And we've kind of broken it up into different dates. I think we showed this to you the last time we met back in May, that we would be presenting the land use and mobility, kind of themes and really the kind of the direction that we're heading with land use and mobility in our next meeting in September. And then economic development and public facilities and services, we'd be drafting those elements and getting those ready by near the end of the year. And then beginning of 2023, we would be into the elements focusing on recreation, open space, and conservation. So for future general plan working group meetings, our next meeting would be in September. Again, this is discussing land use, circulation / mobility portions of the plan. And then we'll skip a month and then meet again in November, discussing the economic development portion of the plan, and the public facilities and services. And then meeting in December and January with other elements, getting your thoughts and your feedback regarding those portions of the general plan. So here's some of the next steps that we have over the next few months. Again, finalizing the vision statement and guiding principles, preparation of the draft goals and policies, and reviewing the existing general plan. We've seen kind of things that have been inserted into that, and through your other efforts like the RUDAT plan. So we'll be preparing the draft goals and policies. And then as a part of this process, the economic development strategy has been started, and I'm sure you've heard about that effort happening. There's several meetings that have occurred, and there's some meetings coming up in July where they're going to be doing some stakeholder meetings so they can start crafting that specific economic development strategy, which we're working together with that consultant to help fold those ideas and recommendations into the general plan, the economic development portion of the general plan. So that's being worked on, and the housing element as well. We're going to be coordinating with the consultant team on that to make sure that those goals and policies from the housing element are reflected in our general plan document. And we're looking to have the next general plan working group meeting on the first Thursday of September. So that's September 1st. And really excited to get going into this phase of the project and writing the general plan elements moving forward. And any questions on the last few slides in terms of process and where we're heading?
One other kind of related announcement. PlaceWorks is preparing the housing element, and I was told today that they'll have the first administrative draft for staff to review in about a week. And they'll be looking for staff's comments, which we'll just kind of be going through the document. But they'll be looking for our comments towards the end of July, beginning of August, and they'll quickly go to a public review draft that will then be published. So the housing element is moving fast, and you'll be seeing it as community members, planning commissioners, and city council members very soon. Go ahead. As Nick said, any questions about the next steps?
Yep.
Good.
Go ahead, Edwin.
Oh.
I'll get them. That's what they get
My
for
only
not coming
comment
here
was,
tonight.
I did have a small comment, and just that as new data comes in, if you, we don't need to have a meeting for it, but if you supply a chart showing how that data is flowing and how many surveys we do receive after.
Yeah, sir.
Lisa, go ahead.
I just had if we want to give input on the vision statement and the guiding principles, when you're going to send that, could you include a date that you would like that feedback by? I don't necessarily check the city email on a daily basis, so would want to be able to work that in with the deadline so that if I'm wanting to participate, I can.
We will circulate materials by end of day tomorrow, and we'll be looking for responses 1 week later. So the Friday of the following week would be when we would like to get responses back.
And
If
how
that,
would you like those responses? What would you like us to do? Write on hard copy, or what format would that take?
ideally, if you're comfortable and understand how to use the track changes function, that would be the most helpful way. Understand that we'll be getting input from lots of sources, and we're going to have to kind of harmonize comments that may not exactly align. We will take it in any form you want to provide. If that's a hard copy with handwriting on it, that's absolutely fine. If the only way you can respond is hard copy, with handwriting and you want to drop it off at Christine, she'll get it to us. We'll take it in any form you can get. Our preference would be edit it in Word and use track changes so we can see what you've changed. And that'll help us to just pull it all together.
Okay.
Or
Judith?
I think would be fine. You know, providing your comments that way as well.
Judith, did you have a question?
That was my question. But Nick, what did you just say?
Oh, sorry. You know, even if you wanted to send an email, if it's hard for you to
Okay, all right.
track changes in Word, or you don't want to write on the paper, if you just send an email explaining your thoughts and your comments.
Okay.
Anybody else on Zoom have any questions or comments they want to throw out? Okay.
Nope.
Chair, that concludes our presentation for this evening.
Okay.
We appreciate the input, and any last questions we'd be happy to respond to.
Guess we have nothing else then. Staff announcement, the economic development strategy, the service group stakeholder meetings are on July 14th. There's one in the morning and then there's one in the late afternoon. So all the service groups and nonprofits have been asked to participate at whatever time is convenient for them. And I believe there's going to be a separate one for all of the churches in the city. So that will help too. So if you can join in any of those meetings, we'd love to have you there. If there's nothing else, we're going to adjourn. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you.